Okay, so I'm just putting together another project here. I don't think any of you have ever seen this before. And I decided to favor y'all with another of my rants. It's going to be a mild rant. It's going to be a pleasant rant. Well, maybe not pleasant, but not really a rant per se. And my rant, I'm doing it for the same reason a dog licks its balls. Because I can. And also because I think it's important. I always talk about how knowing why is all that matters. One of the things that came to my attention lately, I a lot of times will take all this bright colored crap out of my deal before I do a video, but some days I forget, and today I need it. These are little levels that I use. One of the things that's come to my attention is some people have said, Al, why do you use cheesy, cheap tools? Why aren't you out there with high-end this and high-end that? You know, I'll use some hosey little $6 V-line or whatever this is. This one is, doesn't matter what it is. It's got decent ratings. And the answer is because I live my life understanding why. Why is this tool worse than a name brand $180? I have the ability to come up with the why. Because the good Lord has blessed me and I am able to buy good stuff when necessary. So I have $180 and I have I have Starrett tools, I have Mitutoyo tools, I have an open account with Long Island, which some of you may know what that means. But here's the thing, I live in a real world. All I got to do to find out if this is good or not is test it against an expensive tool. This is a $20 tool. A bunch of my calipers are $5 to $10. But would you rather have one really good tool that you got to go... Now if you're working by the hour, you can have one really good tool over in your toolbox, and every time you need it, you wander your lazy butt over there and get it, and you get paid $11 to walk over and get it and come back. I'm self-employed. I don't have that. I don't get paid by the hour. I do this for love and passion and to pass on my thoughts to the world at large. I buy these, I own these, and I am the final arbiter and the final tester and the final answer. And what I'm telling you is when I have 20 calipers and I can check them against each other, and I do on a daily basis, and I weed out the bad ones and I put them over here and I put them over there. So, in that note, that's also why I'm using this $1 level. Because I probably have 40 levels kicking around here. I can grab a level out of here. I can reach back and I can grab one still in the package. I can furthermore reach back, grab a couple of more bigger ones. Any place that I'm working, I can have my levels. Now here's the funny thing. This is the reason, this is what kicked me off. All I'm doing is putting a muzzle brake on, guys. One of my homemade muzzle brakes, I'm going to rock set it. And I'll explain why. And while I was doing it, I whipped out a level and I leveled the assembly. I checked the bottom of the recoil lug. I checked, what's important to me is that the pick rail is I set the pick rail to be directly above the bore to the best of my ability. But in the end, the be-all and the end-all is that this pick rail is what I level off of. This becomes my index. I pour foundations for a living. The first thing I have to do is find the elevation, the height, to assess the main deck of the house that we're building. Where do you want the main deck? Where do you want your stairs? Where do you want your stairways? Where do you want your entry to come on? Where is the main deck? That becomes 0. The standing walking surface of the deck of the home. We do a lot of custom homes, up, down, sideways. Once that's established, I can work below 0, I can work above 0. There's the why. This is why we are good at placing a house on the lot. This, after I've done my due diligence and checked a few things, this becomes my 0. Now I use this. This is where I set my scope from. Now, of course, when I set my scope, I run out to 100 yards and I have a plumb section of plywood at the edge of my target that was plumbed with a plumb bob. And this brings me to something important. We carry plumb bobs at work, and I get people coming out and saying, how come you're not using a laser? And how come? I said, because I'm picky. It's critical to me that things be right. Let me show you something here. Why is important in this world? When we're trying to establish level on something, the one constant that we have to work with is the gravitational attraction of this planet that we're walking on. The laws of gravitation suggest that the center of mass of the object is where your plumb bob will always point to. There is nothing better than a plumb bob. All the measuring tools, this is why I go on these rants about measuring. Measuring people is for fools. We measure to get things close. We measure to establish relative sizes, but in the end we're going to gauge. In the end we're going to use larger constants than a tape measure or a caliper. Now when I'm measuring with these calipers, I test them one against the other. If I find that for some magical reason my Mitutoyo caliper is somehow more accurate than my Starrett, or somehow more accurate than my Harbor Freight piece of junk, then I act accordingly. The same is true of these levels. I need to level the action because I need to level the muzzle brake. And while I'm talking, I'm going to start. I've already degreased this muzzle brake. I've cleaned, whoa, this rock set is easy stuff to work with, but not so easy to talk and get on there correctly. Now I slobbered that on kind of goobery, but I'm screwing this over, so it should wipe that in really well, and then I'll reapply. So, in this world of measuring and expensive tools and cheap tools and how to get things right, the dirty little secret is the engineers of the world, the so-called smart people of the world, the people that design this stuff, the people that set up I have 20 laser transits. And they range in price from $500 to $10,000. But the dirty little secret is these laser transits all have an internal leveling mechanism that does what? It reads off the gravitational, not the gravitational constant, but the direction of gravity. It's got a little plumbing assembly in there. Most of them spin up and they find that point of gravitation, which is the mythical center of our planet. No matter how expensive a piece of equipment you get, the best it can do to find level is that same thing that a plumb bob does. The same is true of levels. I have 20 levels. Here's the thing, people. You buy a $1 level. You put it on. You roll it around and you center the bubble. Now you take that $1 level and you do this. And you find out whether the level is good or not. Or you take another $1 level and you put it with this. And then you spin it around. This is rocket science, people. Rocket science is not complicated. Rocket science is training coupled with the ability to think. If you can't think, you're useless. That applies to all tooling. So what we've got here is, I decided to take this as an answer to why I use some cheap tools. I use good methods. I'm extremely picky about what I do. I do my own stuff because I don't trust anybody else. I don't even trust myself, let alone trust anybody else. Now, the reason I'm rock setting this, I tried to set it up so that I get a nice jam fit at the front. At the same time, this thing in the back, well, I wanted it to time out with a jam fit in the front and get this as far back as I could. So as everything came together, I came as close as possible to getting 3 points of contact. When it was all said and done, I tightened it down once, and I tightened it too far. I didn't tighten it too far. I deformed my surface. The bottom line is that I can no longer jam the front in. I now have to back it off. So I'm going to try this with rock set. I'm going to set this with the front not being locked into a wedge of some sort. I've talked about how I feel that it's important that this up here be seated, that it be solid. And then we've got this joint assembly here that's tightens up fairly good. And the way we use this assembly is, with the crudest and rudest of devices, we go on here with a decent crescent wrench that won't deform anything, and we trial and error it together until we get it to come flat at a reasonably tight setting. I say reasonably tight because I'm not torquing these. I'm relying. I am using this wrench back. Well, it won't work the other way, so I have to use this backwards. This is another thing. Most people don't know how to use one of these. Next time you're using a crescent wrench, I want you to analyze the forces. This floppy section right here is where your play occurs and where the wrench warps and where the strength, if you're going to use a crescent wrench, an adjustable spanner, call it what you want. In America, it's a crescent wrench, so screw all y'all. But we all use them backwards. The idea is to get the pressures to bear at the root of the surface that can break and is subject to deformation. In this case, I'm pulling the wrong way. I'm pulling like this, and that puts the pressure point out here, further away from the fulcrum. So again, think. Anyway, I'm not going very tight with this. I'm going to go ahead and stick this on here and tighten. Whoop. As I said, trial and error. There we are, though. There we are, tight. Boy, this is hard to adjust and get right, people. And this is one of the reasons. There we go. Now we are perfect. And if I really want to check the Y of the thing, I turn it around. These are magnetic, and they're like a buck. And literally, I can do that, but it's close. I can almost just set them on there. That magnetic tool, there's a drop down there. Getting sloppy. Okay. Yeah, I dropped it down. I got some. But the reason I decided to show y'all while I do this is, this isn't the optimum tightening down system, because I'm not getting the 3 points of contact I tried for. I've got it here, and that's it. So I goobered a bunch of this goop in here, hoping that it'll bulk up here a little, bulk up here a little. We'll take it out and shoot it. We'll find out if this assembly shoots to my standard. Otherwise, I've got to take it back out, chuck it back in the lathe, and fiddle with this until I can get it to jam way back here, and then tighten it up until it flattens out with this front end buried tightly. Then bring this. A little more tricky, but we're playing with this, not tunable per se. To be tunable, it should be set up like Eric Cortina's situation, where he's got the locking assembly back here, and then up here in the front he's got a tuning weight. I'm doing something completely different than that, because I'm going to do some tuning back here using some rings, if I decide to tune. This is a hunting rifle. This particular thing is going to get the, but I thought it was an opportunity. Everything is a learning opportunity. When a person's got something to pass on, you've got to pick your, I'm in teaching mode all the time, whether I'm teaching hunter ed, whether I'm teaching my safety at work. The government in its infinite wisdom, it's here to help, takes taxpayer dollars and makes these organizations that are going to come out and tell you on the construction job site how to be safe. They don't have a clue. They don't know how to be safe. All they can do is look at actuary charts and use other stupid people's accounts and make up things of their own, and some of them are crazy, trying to make you safe. My safety plan at work that I hand out to new hires and to everybody and that I give to these inspectors says the only safety that we have, I also say this in hunter ed, the only safety that we have is our brain. You've got to learn to think and live safe. I have fired a number of people because they don't have the ability to be safe on the job site. They're handling rebar, they're driving equipment. There are things on the job sites I work on that can make you dead. Therefore, It's important that you learn to understand why you're doing something to be safe. In the same way that I want you to understand why I can use this cheapo little level. Because the level just takes a reading off of gravity. Gravity is essentially constant. It's constant enough that it's what everybody uses. It's all anyone can use as a frame of reference. Surveying, navigating around the world, until you leave this rock and get out into space and start running through the parabolas or going to another planet or moon or something, the gravitational constant, I need to quit saying that because that's not what it is. The gravitational directional constant is our frame of reference. And it does not matter if you're using a plumb bob, which is a rock on a string, or a cheap little 99-cent level, or a $10,000 laser transit. I don't think much of lasers. Lasers are so overhyped. Back in the 50s, when you read the old SF, or shoot for that matter, if you read the magazines of the day, which might as well have been SF, Popular Science, Popular Mechanics, they were vaporware. And they talked about things like tractor beams and energy beams and beaming electricity. Well, physics has advanced far enough now that it's pretty easy to show that this kind of stuff is never going to happen. There is no such thing as a tractor beam. There are no magics out there. As much as we want magic, in simple fact, the world runs on reality, and the reality is that we use that gravitational constant, and the reality is that a simple rock on a string is just as accurate as a $10,000 quote laser. I'm on a bit of a laser rant kick lately because our tax dollars have been spent on a bunch of laser tech. The Ponce, I've mentioned it before, stupid billions of dollars being wasted on a stupid ship floating around out there that's going to send a stupid laser up and supposedly knock an airplane out of the sky. Anybody with a 7th grade education and a brain can see that that's never going to happen. And they're just so easily guarded against that we're wasting our time. But everybody wants the lightsaber. See, we're a generation of people that were raised with Star Wars, and we think a lightsaber is achievable, that it's a real thing. I'm sorry. You are never in your life going to see a lightsaber. There is no, the physics cannot exist. So, back to what we're doing here. I wanted to show again, that's the reason I left these out, these little deformed pieces. Yet again, these are being used over and over and over. I use these on a skinny little barrel. This is a skinny little 695 barrel. These conform to it really well. Now, I didn't put much bone to it there. And in fact, when I tightened this action to my 150 foot-pounds, I did it up here where the barrel is more like 820 or 860 or something. But that doesn't change the fact that with these shims, this barrel vise, and this is a barrel vise that I've just adapted and put some metal on. I've talked about all that before. And use the things that are to hand, people. The fact that we're still using gravity, just like the caveman did, doesn't somehow mean that some new tech has come along to invalidate gravity. There is no new tech. That's another of my things. We drive cars that were invented 130 years ago, and the technology hasn't really changed. And it's the same thing that your grandkids are going to be driving. Fossil fuel powered, internal combustion engine cars. Regardless how this is 2022 and everybody's going to electric and all the stupid people believe that we can live on wind and solar power, the fact will always be that if you're too dumb, if you're too retarded, if you're too ignorant to understand that that black oil we're sucking out of the ground is solar power, then you're just another of the sycophants that's going to go along day by day never understanding the why of anything and being constantly suckered by unscrupulous people, including people in our government, into buying into solar power and wind power and alternative energy. And that rant does tie into my other thing. Always, always, people, understand that the important thing is to know how or why a thing can work. And I'm using this to illustrate one of life's simplest things. $1 and the gravitational directionality pointing toward the center of our planet is enough to make something perfectly level as can be perceived. And two things that are level and within a few hundred feet of each other can be considered to be planar. In this case, I want the gun on this end and the muzzle brake on this end to be planar, scope standing up, so that when the gun is held level, the muzzle brake sits there flat. A lot of reasons for that. The biggest one for me is simply aesthetics. I see flat, I deal with flat every day, so when I pick up a gun, it's important that it be flat. And this is just another way of showing how to do it, and an explanation of why Al uses a cheap level. Not because I'm cheap, I'm frugal, not cheap, but because there's no gain in doing something better. I laugh at people who go out and buy an $800 level to level their lathe in. Completely retarded for a whole host of reasons. Number one is that as a concrete guy, I know that the floor that lathe is sitting on is moving every day, incrementally in such a way that that level will never read the same day to day. The way to level the lathe is to make it cut straight, to make it cut parallel. But I digress. It still is funny to see somebody on a $200,000 lathe running around to the level using that constant. Now, they wouldn't use this level. They need something that, but the point is that the theory, and when I say theory, that's the rationale, that's the reason behind a thing, that's why it works. And the theory of using the constant of pointing toward the center of the earth to produce 90-degree right angle scenarios, and the constant with a level coupled with flipping that level end to end gives you the facility to, this is one of those machines that checks itself. If I buy one of these for $1 and I check itself and it is screwed up and I can't fix it, I chuck it, and it just cost me $1. It did not cost me the expense of a big fancy lathe level to do a job that could be done with water in a bowl. Thank you very much.